My name is Gaitha Siddha. I claim that Jesus never fulfilled the messianic prophecies. I'm here to tell you why that's not such a crazy claim. Today I'm going over this comment. I already went over one of these verses, but let's talk about it. We're going to talk about Isaiah 53 first because I already talked about it. I already did my research. Let's skip the foreplay and get straight to the fun bits, okay? We're not sitting here talking about Jesus. We're not talking about a Messiah here. We're talking about the people of Israel. The people of Israel. Don't cancel me. But it's true. Deutero-Isaiah was written during the Babylonian exile, 6th century BC. That's about 500 some odd years before Jesus. And you can see that we're talking about the exiled Judaic people in Babylon. For example, he will see his offspring and prolong his days, and he will divide the spoils with the strong. I've heard that we're all children of God, but Jesus did not have offspring. This is the collective offspring of the Judeans and the people of Israel. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. Nothing in his appearance that we should desire him, like one whom people hide their faces. This is not saying that the Messiah is unattractive or that righteousness is unattractive. This is saying that the land of Canaan was laid to ruin and stripped of its glory. The text is not saying that people hide their face because the Messiah and his righteousness are unattractive, but because the shame of Canaan's nakedness. Also, what's the deal with the perspective change between he and we? Who is the servant actually? Yes, Jesus is known as a servant of God, but servant can mean anyone who carries out God's will. The author used servant as a metaphor, representing the people collectively and the prophet himself, or a representative of God, not necessarily the Messiah. The problem is, if you believe Jesus is God and that people can write about hundreds of years in the future, then why not? But if you put aside your bias and think about it in a secular manner, that interpretation doesn't make a lick of sense. Let's move on to Psalms 22. Pause the video and read this for a second. Psalms 22 is a prayer of lamentation of King David, not a prophecy about Jesus. This text represented a broader lament tradition in Israel, where we hear individual voices experience extreme suffering, alienation, and plea for divine rescue. This text was written between 10th century and 6th century BCE, potentially 1,000 years before Jesus. It wasn't until later that Christians retrospectively reinterpreted the text to have messianic elements. But I know what you're thinking, like, come on, mocked by onlookers, casted lots of clothes, pierced between the hands? How could you not say that's Jesus? So I'm gonna give you a striking little bit of evidence. Take a look at these key verses. Did you catch it? Some manuscripts read lying at my hands and feet instead of pierced at my hands and feet. But why? Which text is the original? The New Testament writers used the Greek text, not the Masoretic text, to formulate their reinterpretation. We know that because the Greek text and the Masoretic text are translated differently. The older Masoretic text reads, like a lion in my hands and feet. But the Greek Septuagint from the 3rd and 2nd century BC reads, they dug or pierced my hands and feet. Originally, it didn't align with the crucifixion. The Septuagint writers were probably working with a damaged or corrupt Hebrew text, or possibly was grammatically awkward. Thus, ka'ari, like a lion, becomes karu. They dug or they pierced. But since they were working with hyperbolic metaphorical language describing the suffering, it worked because it was violent. For example, Biggie said time to get paid, blow out like the World Trade. But was he talking about 9/11? No, it's metaphorical. He couldn't have possibly known that was going to happen. And that's how liturgical synchronicity turns into prophecy.